This is us. Good afternoon.
Good to see you, Joe.
Good to see you. You're all squinty. Can you see me, Brian?
I can't. A little bright out here because I'm getting ready for winter, and I had to take the tarp off my patio, and so yeah. But it's good. It's good. It's a nice day out here. How are you? How's your day been going?
That's good. It's been a relatively effective day. In terms of work and busyness. It's kind of nice to go, oh, shoot, it's almost 2:00, as opposed to, it's a long day. It feels like I'd rather have the day kind of fly by than to be clock watching. So it's a good day.
Good thing. Yeah. Well, good. Yeah. I'm just hanging out, been working on the message for next week already, and doing some grocery shopping today. Just the normal things. But it's been a while since you and I've been able to sit down and talk. There's so much to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I think, let me see, because you were gone for a couple of weeks, so no podcast, and I was gone last week. So, on the positive side, what that means is that we're getting some rest.
Yeah. Which is, rest is important. Even Jesus took breaks and had to force the disciples to take breaks. So yeah, rest is a good thing. I heard somebody say something along the line that rest is an exercise in trusting that God's got it.
Oh, he maketh me lie down. Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose that's true. I mean, like anything, I suppose that can be abused. I think of my brother-in-law, whose opinion of, predestination is, well, he already knows what's going to happen, so what am I supposed to do? I'll just do nothing.
I'll be. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, which just jumps right into our topic if we want to, or we can go other places, but.
Well, we're only 2 minutes in. That'd be like a new record from banter to message. So
it would be. It'd be just right. Too fast. We'll swing back around to that. So I just don't know. I don't know what's happening with your kids, but mine are getting ready for winter, and Jack's getting ready for sports, and Dawson is selling cards on eBay, and they're seniors. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Weird. And yours just started high school.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. Well, you're where we are projecting for ourselves. Like we're going, okay, wow, he's here already. He's already in high school, and the next 4 years are going to go very quickly. And what's that going to feel like? And both Vanessa and I are kind of acutely aware of. Our relationship is really on solid ground. We work really hard at that. And, there's definitely a difference between loving your kids and liking your kids. Mm-hmm. And that's not to be unkind. But Sam's a pretty likable kid. He's fun to be around. Yeah, he's got his surly teenage moments. We have not reached the stage where we're like, can't wait till these kids get out of here, or this kid gets out of here. Maybe we'll get there. We definitely got there with Maris. But it doesn't feel like we're going to get there with this kid, and so there's a sense of dread of like, what's it going to be like when he's not here and we don't have the pleasure of his company. So it speaks really well to who Sam is. And it makes me think about, for you and Kathy, and how that must feel with that transition. Your boys are pretty independent, becoming more so all the time. So,
yeah, I was saying it to someone on Sunday that I didn't realize when I had kids that I was signing up for a lifetime of anxiety. Which, because you never stop worrying about your kids. You never stop being concerned about them, which wasn't a new thought. And then she said, yes, that's true. And just wait till they're out of the house. Now you have a pretty good idea what they're doing all the time. After that, you really have no idea what they're doing, because, yeah, they'll tell you some things, but you're not around them all the time. It gets worse. And I'm like, oh, great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if my parents had known all the stupid choices I made after I moved out of their house, I don't want to, yeah. It's just a lot of stuff they don't need to know. And I had the freedom to make some mistakes. I suffered some consequences of mistakes. And you continue to wish that and hope that your children have enough of a foundation that when they do ultimately make mistakes, that they have the wherewithal, whether it's the experience or the wisdom or the courage to remedy that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's parenthood. That's growing up. We're all going to make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. Still, one of the big things I've been learning about and just really focusing a lot lately on is that the only thing I can control is my response. That's it. I can't control your response or their choices, what they think about me, what they don't think about me. I mean, nothing regarding them. Only how I respond. That's it.
Yeah. I think I've mentioned this before. Vanessa explained it this way. If it's a sunny day and then it starts to rain, you have a couple of choices. You can gripe about the rain. You can be unhappy about the rain. It's not going to change the fact that it's raining. It's raining. So what's your response to the rain? Put on a coat, take an umbrella,
Go inside, whatever it is, but you can't affect the rain. It's just what it is. And people are like that. It's just, what are you going to do? The image in my mind has been pinball, actually.
Okay.
Where it's when the ball comes down, you have the option of how you're going to hit it. When people come into your life and interact with you, yes, you have that briefest moment to interact with them. But then once you do, they're going to do whatever they do. And you have zero control of where that ball goes or where it dings around until it comes back around to you. But it's what it is. That's it. And sometimes you whiff it and the ball goes back into the gutter and you start over, and sometimes you hit it perfect, and it's just what it is. Yeah. Anyways.
All right.
Truth. We talked about truth, and this control thing, we're going to talk about that more on Sunday when it comes to, because we're going to be talking about anger. But this week was all about, speak the truth. And what does that mean? And how does that look like? And I talked about how, God is truth. Jesus determines what's truth. It's not really, we have our perspectives and our opinions about what is true. And to a certain extent, I suppose there's a reality to how we view things. But there's a reality beyond what we want. It's like the rain thing. My opinion of whether or not it's raining makes no difference on whether or not it is. Just is. And you can't really affect that. It's just is. And that's what we mean by truth. And that if you don't tell the truth, it really does hurt people. It's very destructive to relationships because it erodes trust. It creates anxiety. There's so many lies we believe about ourselves, and the question becomes, how do you tell the truth? Because that involves a lot of discernment. You don't always know what's true and what's not, and that calls for humility, because maybe you don't have the full story. And then wisdom of how do you say what you need to say? You don't always have to say everything. And when you do speak, you don't always have to be blunt. Sometimes I think people, in the name of, well, I'm just telling the truth, they're actually quite mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're not actually kind, and it's not helping. But they're using, I'm just telling you the truth, in in the name of actually being mean. Yeah, not a good. It's not good. So there's a discernment and wisdom to how you speak the truth. So that's a little bit about what I talked about on Sunday.
One of the questions that popped into my head on Sunday, because it's something that I think is convicting to me personally, and also I think just kind of a cultural challenge that we have. You discussed the idea of my truth versus your truth, and how we kind of color our opinion with the idea that I can apply my own set of facts, I'll put that in quotes, to derive what I believe is accurate, or what I want to believe is accurate. And I wonder how hard we strive to verify what is true, or to confirm what is true, beyond what validates our preconceptions. And I know for myself, there have definitely been times where I would stop at, before I even started, frankly. I remember a guy came over to our house for a barbecue, and he got into a very political conversation with another person at the barbecue. They're both very different sides of the political spectrum. In the debate, one guy he was very emotional in his stance. And then the other guy was very knowledgeable. And every time the emotion slammed up against the truth, the knowledge, it fell apart. And because the first guy who was debating from an emotional standpoint stopped researching, or stopped exploring, at the point where it validated how he felt it should be. And when I apply that to faith, that becomes a very weak faith.
Yeah. Yeah. But we are so driven by emotion, and especially in this day. And I don't know the circumstance of those particular people, but I do feel like it's both sides do that. Because it's changing your viewpoint on something is really uncomfortable. People don't want to do that. And it's challenging, and that's something that you and I probably need to have more conversation in as we come. I haven't talked to anybody about. I haven't even had a chance to tell you, Joe, that I'm thinking that we as a church need to sit down and think about how we are going to respond to the political climate as a church, because the two sides are so charged. And I think part of the issue is, as you just said, it's whose truth is true. It's hard to tell today because it's so emotionally charged, and we want to believe our preconceived ideas, and man, it's tough.
It is, yeah. And it's not just like the politics, but how how we interpret certain passages, and or how we apply certain passages. And I know that in my study, there are definitely times where I come in with a long-standing preconception based on a casual conversation that I had with somebody 30 years ago, and that somehow has stood the test of time without actually being tested, without actually being challenged. And then I'll read something, I'll go into a deeper study of what the word means, what the context at the time meant, that kind of stuff, and I'll go, I've been really wrong about this. It's really something more like this. A passage that comes to mind is when you were speaking Philip and the eunuch. Is that right? Do I have that right? Was it Philip?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And just the idea that, here's somebody whose circumstance couldn't be changed, and yet, there was opportunity there. And I never really looked at it that way. I hadn't looked at that passage beyond kind of surface level. Okay, here's Philip, there's a road, there's a eunuch. That's really cool. This guy believes Jesus. It never got beyond that, to look underneath that, to look at what's the social ramification of being a eunuch in that culture. Where did they stand, in terms of caste systems? And it opens your eyes a little bit you know, I talk about this all the time. Jesus is so simple and so complex at the same time, which is why his teachings are extraordinary.
Yeah. But that it's so true though. Yeah. And as I've said a lot lately is you're convinced that it's that what you think is absolutely true until you realize it's not. And that's hard because we do. I mean, you never knowingly believe a lie. You always, or an error. You always think it's true until somebody points it out. Ugh.
Hmm.
And it's, yeah, theology, it's personal relationships where it's your own inner thoughts where you're convinced that this is true and that the way you're looking at yourself or the world is right. And then one day a light bulb goes off and you go, oh, I've been thinking about people like that or myself like that, and that's not accurate. Lies. Man, it's so devastating. And it's so easy to believe the truth. I mean, a lie and not the truth. And so that's why I had to push this takes this discernment. This takes the humility of going, do I really right? Because maybe I don't.
Yeah.
We push our so hard, but maybe you don't have it.
Well, and then you add in, not to overwhelm people, but the level of complexity, which you brought up, which is the idea that Satan used the truth in his conversation tempting Jesus, where he's quoting scripture and it's true.
Truth.
However, in that context, it was truth being manipulated in such a way as to manipulate people or to twist people. And so that level of discernment is that the requirements just are up. However, the challenge that I throw out there is if somebody told you that in 5 months you had to run a 5K, you had to run 3 miles, most folks would be like, I can figure that out. It probably wouldn't be that hard and it wouldn't seem insurmountable. And you might not take it as seriously as you should. And then 4 weeks beforehand, you go, oh, I haven't trained at all. What am I going to do? If somebody said in 5 months, you have to run a marathon, that would feel overwhelming. And it's serious enough that you would start thinking about it now and you would start planning for it now. You would start that preparation now. So if we think about kind of the challenge of what is the truth and how we speak the truth, if our paradigm shift is it's not easy. I can't just digest truth the way I'm used to digesting it, but I have to kind of reframe how I take this on. If you understand that it's a big challenge, maybe you'll take it more seriously.
Wow, well said. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I guess that's really one of the few things you can say with this is just take it seriously and work hard at it. Work hard at how do you say something that's true and answers a question that's not hurtful. Like I said, I talked about the woman who keeps asking, where's your dead husband?
Right.
How do you, she has dementia. She keeps forgetting. Well, it's not very kind to continue to say every week, well, he's dead. So you got to figure out a different way of saying the truth because you don't want to lie to her. But you got to figure out a way to say it that's not hurtful. So, and sometimes you don't need to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. Vanessa schooled me on this a little bit yesterday, and you already aware of this, but I didn't share it at church. But a friend of mine, her husband, passed away last week. He took his life, and is part of a community, the voiceover community that I'm a part of. She's somebody that I've mentored for like the past 4 years. She's become a very close friend. I know her family. I knew her husband. People in our community all know who she is because she's just very active. I start getting messages from people. Do you know what happened? Because they know that we're friends. What can you tell me about what happened? And people are asking because I mean, I think there's two sides of it. They care, there's concern, and then there's also that kind of maybe morbid curiosity, or that they want to
Yeah.
alleviate and I feel it too. Well, like, I know that he took his life, but then there's a part of me that wants to know more. Well, what's the circumstances? Because something's so terrible, you want to know, you want to understand more. And my response to people, similar to the dementia patient, is I can't really add anything to what's already been shared.
Couldn't, in the sense of, is it possible, but that you shouldn't.
Right. Yeah. And,
Right.
I don't
Couldn't
really.
in ways.
Yeah. And it's not trying to be, I think we're going to be careful. We're not trying to be sneaky with it.
No.
We're not trying to get away with something. It's just like,
No.
I need to respect this family and how they want to
Yeah.
communicate what happened, how it gets
Right.
around the community. And also, I want to recognize, hey, I know you guys care. And the only reason you're asking is because you care.
Right.
It's just not something that I'm in a position to share.
Right. And that's what I was thinking about with this is, what's your motivation for omission? What's your motivation for not giving a simple, straightforward answer? Well, if it's not selfish, or it's not trying to mislead or deceive, omission can be fine. God omits all the time. There's a lot he doesn't tell us, but it's not because he's trying to mislead us. It's like, yeah, you don't need that information right now.
Yeah. Yeah. There's and there's, yeah, like truths that you don't share with your kids because they're not really in an emotional place to process it. There's just like,
Right.
that's why you wait till you're 16 to drive a car. Right. I mean, like, there's just
You're not ready.
there's certain things that you're not ready for. And so you're omitting it because having that knowledge isn't necessarily helpful.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. I remember hearing a story a long time ago about, it was some famous Christian writer, I don't know, like Elizabeth Elliot or somebody like that. And she had asked her dad of why someone was shot or something like that. And he said, well, they were at a train station, and he said, well, why don't you carry my baggage to the cranes, up to the car? And she goes, I can't, it's too heavy. And he said, that's why I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah.
It's too heavy.
Yeah.
It's too heavy right now. When you get older and you can handle this, you can handle the truth that I could tell you, sure. But right now you just can't handle it yet.
Yeah.
So what's your point? What are you trying to achieve? Which brought me to that verse 29. Is it going to build people up? Is it going to give grace? Is it the season? Is it fitting for that particular moment? I think about in personal relationships when people are fighting and having an argument. They got to be ready to hear what you have to say. If they're not ready, it's not going to help them. It's not going to help you. It's not going to help the argument. So you could tell them the truth right then, but it won't matter. It won't be a good thing. It won't help them.
Right. Yeah. Even if they accept that is the truth in the moment, the way our culture is built, it will only take 5 minutes later, a person could say, well, that's just not what they told you is not true. And that'll completely unwind a factual argument because, our brain is, we've got those pathways that are set up. They're literal pathways in our brain that want to go a certain way. You can redirect them, but if you give it the opportunity to go back through that other pathway that's more comfortable, that aligns with the way that you want to think, you'll just throw away the truth. And I think that's one of the most important things about the whole truth is when we receive that truth is how do we process it? And you used the word humility, which to me is so important, especially if you've been like pushing really hard on something and you embarrass yourself, or you have you are in a position to embarrass yourself by pushing hard on something that ultimately is not accurate.
Yeah.
Can you demonstrate the humility? And on the other side, if you do, if you are proven out to be right, what grace are you showing to that person? You know, because
Yeah.
the idea that go ahead.
Process that for potentially weeks, months, years, and you expect them instantaneously to get where you are. No, maybe not.
Yeah. I mean,
They're
if
not
you're
ready.
like me, you will like get in the shower and all of a sudden you'll remember something foolish that you said or did, or something you believed from 30 years ago, and you're kicking yourself over that. You're still not necessarily giving yourself grace in that. The other person may have completely forgotten it. So Jackson Brown, one of my favorite lyrics, "Don't remind me of my failures. I have not forgotten them."
Oh,
Right? It's giving people space and grace once they hear the truth and acknowledge the truth. You don't need to beat them up over it. Hey, see, I told you I was right. See?
yeah. And that has such huge implications in the church, in our political discourse, in Christians talking with non-Christians.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, is this do you really need to point out their sin? Do you really need to? I don't know that you do. Is this going to help them come closer to Jesus or not? Sometimes you think, well, I'm just telling them the truth. Like, yeah, but are you pushing them away with that? I'm just telling them the truth. And it's loving. Oh, what does it mean to speak the truth in love, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyways.
Well,
that's, I was looking at this whole section. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you just reminded me. I had a conversation with Sam the other day where, he's in high school, his friends, they're using different language, and I'm not necessarily, coarse language, whatever. It doesn't necessarily offend me. I just prefer not to be used. It sneaks out of me occasionally. I do get uncomfortable when people take the Lord's name in vain, and Sam has started to do that. And I just, at one point I stopped him and I said, I just want you to understand that bothers me. It's offensive to me, and it may not mean that much to you. I said, I don't know where you're at with your faith. If it's not that big a deal to you, that's something for you to kind of process, or, like if I was with an atheist and they took the Lord's name in vain, I know it means nothing to them. And so it's not offensive. It's like, me pointing that out to them doesn't point out a sin to them, because it doesn't, there's no
anything.
Right. But for Sam, I'm like, if it's something, if you do believe, then that's something that you should be thinking about. Maybe don't get in that habit. I'd much rather you say, gosh, or whatever. I recognize that. Yeah.
Right. And what was I going to say?
You forgot to do this. Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
It was something along the lines I was thinking about this whole Oh, that's what it was. When I was approached this section of 25 through 31 to the end of the chapter, a lot of preachers just preach the whole section at once. There's 5 little nuggets, of a positive command, a negative command, and a reason why not. There's 5 of them. And a lot of them just say, let's try to a thread through them all of, this is generally what he's saying you should do. This is generally why you shouldn't do it. And what are some reasons why? And I could have done that, but I was looking at truth and some of these others, and I'm like, I think it would be helpful to slow down, because it's complex to try and figure out what is true. There's multiple issues here. And when we talk about anger this week, it's not a simple answer. There's nuances there, because how often are we going to be able to sit down and just talk about speaking the truth? What does that mean? How does that look? Why should we do it? What's the impact? And so that was all. My only point was like, these issues are complex, and then the next one's going to be, I think it's going to be stealing and giving, and when is it stealing, when is it giving, and how do you know who to give to, when is it empowering versus enabling?
Right.
It's like that. That's not a simple answer.
And when is it important to know the difference? When does it matter if you know the difference? Yeah.
And then I ended up with, I'm like looking at it. Oh, we got to get going. I kind of ended with the gospel in applying the truth of who you are in Jesus, looking that you need people to speak truth into your life, because if you don't, you're going to continue to believe the lies that you believe without another voice coming in. And that's why, counseling can be extremely important for so many of us, because you need to hear another voice. You need to hear the truth. You need to pray for, once you have a sense of what that you talked about, pathways in your brain. Praying can help you rewire your brain as you over and over again say, no, this is what's true. God, help me to hear what's true. So there's just, it's a challenge, but we can get there. We can get better.
Yeah. Don't give up, make a small change, then make another small change. And, us as a church, if we have this conversation about how we want to engage or address politics in our world, that kind of thing, right? It's going to feel like, well, what's a church of 80 to 100 people going to do? Well, a lot more than if we don't try.
Right. Yep. All right. It was an interesting conversation. I hope it was blessing for people, and it's a topic. Next week is going to be anger.
That's going to be, yeah, I'm interested. That'll be a fun conversation, I think.
I think so too. All right. Thanks for joining us this week, and hope to see you on Sunday.
Thanks, folks. Take care.
Take care.